Okay, I'm gonna try to tell a story in Chinese. It's been a while since I've spoken, so it might be a little stilted. But here goes nothing. OK， 所以就是昨天晚上我跟几个朋友在聊天，然后就是我和两个那个朋友，以前就是说高中的时候，我们一起上中文课，所以我们三个人差不多7年或者8年学习8年的中文，上8年的中文课。可是高中之后就是毕业之后，他们不上中文课了，可是我一直上中文课，就是大学的时候也上，大学毕业之后我不上了，对，可是大学的时候我一直上中文课，还有就是做朋友吧，就说很多的中文，还有我也去中国留学，所以就是在中国学习中文，跟中国人跟很多人说中文，就是学习中文，联系中文。所以就是我们在聊天，我们3个人就是在聊天，然后有个朋友，就是他说，哎呦，我这么不会中文，就是有一个cousin， 就是他的 cousin， 就是他3岁，你知道吗？可是他的妈妈是中国人，所以我朋友说他会中文，然后我怎么不会，就是非常的embarrassing， 他非常的你知道我不知道怎么说他是什么样，可是我说没事啊，就是没事你可以，你现在你可以就开始学习，就你可以学习中文，现在都可以。你以前学习了很多，可是现在不会，没事啊 ，Who cares？ 就继续吧，就重新开始吧。但是就是我们俩用中文聊天，可是他就是他，好难呀！他的中文水平非常的低，可是还可以 跟我聊天，就一点点，你知道吗？就，可是他会啊，怎么不会？Yeah. I don't know how to say the rest that I want to say in Chinese, but she was very hopeless. And I have a rule for myself that I don't argue with these people who think that they can't, that they think it's too late, or because, like, so basically she was like, I've learned so long. Like, I've learned 8 years. How can I tell people, like, when they ask me how long, oh, haven't you learned for a long time? And she's like, yeah, I've learned for 8 years. First of all, I was like, who cares? You don't have to tell them. Like, lie. Who cares? Because people don't understand that school, learning it in school can be basically useless, okay? Maybe I'll do a longer video on this because I have a lot of thoughts and people might not have realized that there's English afterward. Anyway, people think that just because you learn a language for X amount of years in school that you're just automatically fluent. But like, we were having a conversation and she was like, you know, I know how to say like 传真机号码是什么. And when she first said it, I'm like, what are you even saying? She was like, fax, like, what's your fax number? I'm like, oh my god, I've never had to say 传真机 in my life. Never. I've never had to ask somebody what their fucking 传真机号码 is. So when we learned in school, we learned like a bunch of business stuff, a bunch of whatever. She was like, 花美贸易公司. I'm like, when will I ever need to say that? I guess because, you know, like everything, school is teaching us to become workers, which this is getting into a whole lots of other things, but so the things that we often learn in school language classes are completely irrelevant to like what people are actually saying in the real world. So just learning in school, you're never going to become fluent. And if you expect to be fluent without exposing yourself to the language and without like actually using it, then you're gonna have a bad time. You're gonna be embarrassed when people ask you, why don't you know anything after this many years? But the thing is, it's not actually about how many years you've been learning, it's more about how many hours. And it's not like if you've been learning for 5 years, but you only spend like an hour a month learning it or even listening to it, like of course you're not going to be fluent or even approaching it, even in, like anywhere close to it, which I have a lot of other thoughts about, like fluent and what that means. Man, maybe I should have, I don't know. I feel like this could be, should I talk about it now or should I not? I don't know. This is a really strange format for me because once I get into like non-English mode, I forget that I can just like switch back. And so I like get creative with it. I'm like, okay, how can I express this thing in this language that I'm using? And I'm like, oh, I can just say it in English. Like when I was telling the story, I said cousin, and that was like big for me because normally I would just like get frozen or like figure out how I can reroute the story to explain it without having to use that word. But I don't think there's a I don't think there's a direct translation for cousin. Like I think you would have to specify what kind of cousin, and I don't really know with the purposes of that story. I didn't know how that cousin was related to her, so I don't know. I figured just plop an English word in. Also, I'm curious if any of you 会中文, like if any of you speak Chinese, I'm curious what you thought of it, but I'm also kind of not because like I said, it's been, I'm out of practice. And also I tweeted about this, but I guess I haven't said it here, but I have this thing, which maybe I'll make a whole another video about that. I don't know. This is very, I don't know what I'm doing here. But I have this thing where easy things, particularly in this context, in a language, easy things are like very hard for me. Like I don't know them. But very advanced things, I'm like, I can talk about that all day. I gave a 20-minute extemporaneous speech in Chinese once. but like actual like set phrases and stuff where it's like if you any fucking Mandarin learner would know this stuff, I probably don't know it. Which is fine. Like I'm fine with sounding like an idiot. Actually, that's not true at all. I don't like sounding like an idiot. So it was very vulnerable for me to tell that story and leave it up to the people watching it to judge or not judge. So anyway, that's kind of a disclaimer to say if I sounded like an idiot in any of those sentences or those words or whatever, that's just a me thing. But so I guess let's talk about fluency now. I have maybe a particular view on fluency. Like a lot of times people think fluency means being exactly as good as a native speaker, which to that I say, is every native speaker just as good as the next? Because I know that there's certainly people around me who have like very, very good vocabularies. Not everybody has the same vocabulary. Not everybody knows the same words. So how can you expect yourself to be like native speakers don't even know all words, right? Because some people think fluent means knowing every single word in that language. I don't know every single English word, but I use it. Like I use language. I mean, I use English and I speak it every day and I use it to do things, right? That's the key skill here, is can you use this language to do things? And if you can do that without major hiccups, to me that's fluency. And so like I definitely didn't, you know, tell that story without a single mistake or anything. Like I'm sure I made a ton of mistakes, but I would assume that someone, a native speaker or a Chinese speaker listening to that story could tell what I'm saying, right? And so I can survive in a Chinese speaking context without major upsets, right? And to me that's fluency. So all that to say, like, I don't get too hard on myself for not knowing specific things. Like I don't know, like I said, I'm at a level where it doesn't impact communication too much, whatever, you know, little mistakes that I do make. Well, and it's funny too, because learning Chinese specifically, there's tones, right? And there's this funny thing that happens where so basically, if you're English speakers have a really difficult time with tones typically. And what I see happen is like beginners who or just people who aren't good at tones in general, like never get a tone correct in their life. When they're speaking Chinese, like native speakers will kind of realize, they're like, okay, this person is obviously a learner and they're not saying any of the tones right. So they're listening to that person from that perspective of like, okay, I need to work extra hard to understand what they're saying, and like kind of turn off the part of my brain that's looking for tones, if you will. But when you are someone who does use tones, then it actually gets a lot more difficult, because if you don't remember the specific tones for one word, then you're gonna have a bad time. I keep saying that, but so you're gonna run into miscommunications because people are not operating from that space of like, okay, this is a learner, I need to be trying extra hard to understand what they're saying. They're expecting that you're saying the tones right. And so when you just, a lot of times I couldn't remember when I was telling the story, the tones for, I don't know if it's like 联系 or like 练习. One of them's contact, one of them's practice. Which one's which? Not a clue. But so when I fuck that up in conversation, that actually does cause miscommunications, because they're expecting that the tones that I say are the tones that I mean, because typically that's true. So I just thought that was an interesting thing. And I don't know what else to talk about. I have a lot of thoughts on language, if you can't tell. Maybe I'll do another one on Korean. But I also want to do another, man, I don't want to turn into like a language channel, you know what I mean? But I do have a lot of thoughts on it, and I also have like a lot of tips and like thoughts about the learning process that might be helpful for learners. Specifically, any learners out there, Sean, who is learning Korean. Also a couple other friends, but specifically I told Sean that I would make a video about Korean. But I was gonna say something else. Oh, but so another thought I have, just a random related thought, is the importance of congruence in terms of like being a language learner and your pronunciation as a language learner. So you might think, I think I had this view, or some part of me has this view, where it's like your goal should be perfect pronunciation, or your goal should be as good a pronunciation as I can get it, and that is like good and right, and that's what you should be aiming for. But what I think now, or what most of me thinks, or at least a big part of me thinks, is that the more important goal, or a more beneficial goal, is congruence. And what I mean by that is your pronunciation provides interlocutors with information about your level. What I mean by that is, if you have really, really good pronunciation, then people are going to expect that you're going to perform in the conversation at a very, very, very high level. So if your pronunciation outpaces your actual like speaking level, repeat it with me, you're gonna have a bad time. Whereas if you say you're really, really good, or like you have a lot of like you can communicate, but if your pronunciation is trash, people are going to expect that you're not good at it. And so you might run into the familiar problem where you try to speak to and practice with a native speaker, and they immediately revert to English, because when they hear, bad pronunciation, they're gonna think it's just gonna be easier to speak English. Let's just do that. Let's not bother with whatever this language is. However, if you're congruent, so for example, if you have, bad pronunciation or beginner pronunciation, and you are a beginner, then that can signal to other people that they are gonna, need to interact with you from this place of, okay, I need to be a lot more understanding, give a lot more grace, maybe like squint my ears a little bit to understand what they're saying. So that can be a advantage and a tool that you can use. So for me, I feel like my pronunciation level is congruent with my actual speaking level, because my pronunciation is pretty good. Obviously not perfect, it's not like native level, but neither is my speaking level. So to me, I think they're pretty congruent. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a helpful thing to keep in mind, that your goal doesn't have to be perfect pronunciation, it can just be congruent pronunciation. Which is to say, pronunciation that matches your level. Do I have any other, 20-minute video again. It's surprisingly easy to just talk and talk and talk. Interesting. Since I don't start videos with like a script or anything, I did have notes. I forget who I was talking to, maybe pre-rat. No, Hamish, yeah. Right? Sorry, apologies, I forget. I think it was Hamish. I said I don't have any. Yeah, it definitely was. I said I don't prepare. I just say whatever nonsense comes to mind. That's accurate. And he said, no, you have notes. You had notes for a video. I said, okay, yeah. First video I did have notes. But I didn't look at them. I didn't look at them. So even if I have them, like, I typically have a starting point, like a starting topic I want to talk about, and maybe in my head some thoughts I want to say, but I just go. I just talk. But what I was gonna say is that because that's my approach, that means I also have to, on the fly, decide when I'm gonna end the video, which is intimidating. What do I want to say? Overwhelming? Something. It's difficult because then that gets me into the space of like, okay, what's a good time to end it at? Like, should I keep going? Should I aim for this time? Should I aim for that time? When really what I would like to do is just to feel into my yes and no and see when it feels right to end the video, which might be now. I don't know, I keep yawning. Let's see, does it feel right to end the video? Maybe I just should and see how that feels. What to do. My eyes are unfocused, can you tell? My shoulder right here is so tense. You know, I will say, recording a video is like I'm not alone anymore. I guess I said that in one other video because like if I turn the video off, then I'm alone and I don't want to be alone. Okay, I think that's all. Damn, this is hard. How do I know when to end a video? I'm gonna ask Costco. Costco, if you're watching this, how do you know when to end a video? Pre-rat, if you're watching this, how do you know when to end a video? Hamish, I don't know if you do similar videos, but oh. Hamish, if you're watching this, how do you know when to end a video? Who else? Anybody else? I don't know. Anybody else? How do you know when to end the video? Also, I will be real with you. This is the first video where I've mentioned friends by name, which if you saw my last video, or no, one of my other ones, heck, I don't know. Well, maybe you don't know, but part of what was going on in my brain is, do I want to mention this friend by name? Or do I not? So that was very vulnerable for some reason. I don't know, it's just that whole thing of I don't know what I want to share on what platform. Okay, let's end this thing. Thanks for watching if you did. Bye!